All right, so now we get to make mock-ups, well, kind of, okay? And before we actually start doing the kind of wireframing and those types of things, we need to get a kind of a features list, okay? What are we gonna include in this new app, this new website, this extra feature? Okay, you might have a core nugget of an idea, but you need the kind of supporting stuff as well. What other features does it need to have to make it work? Okay, and this is where you do it again as a group team. Okay, so you want to make sure everybody's on board and kind of singing from the same song sheet. Now, first thing to do is make sure, say you could do this in one big group. You could do your personas and then afterwards, maybe after a lunch break, come back and do the features list just as a bit of a time so you can kind of adjust the persona, or you could do it the following week or something like this. So get everybody back together, and then it's just a matter of making sure they've read the persona so they really understand, who the features are for, and then come back and get your post-it notes again. Yay! We get to do more post-it notes, okay? And just get people to yell out features, okay? Say we're using my website as an example, okay? So it's an online training site and delivering videos, and you start at the ball rolling. It needs a forum. You write that down, stick it to your wall. Okay, somebody else might say it needs, a live chat with the trainer. Great, add that to it. It needs a pause button and play button. Okay, it needs some sort of maybe bookmarking or adding notes, and you kind of just get the ball rolling with everybody. And no feature is, bad. Just add them all on there. Stick them to the wall, and once you've got a kind of a group together, a bunch of them together, where you've exhausted your features list, you might have hundreds. Okay, you might have 10. There might be, there might be loads. There might be only a little bit. So group them all together, and any features that are kind of very similar, stick together on your whiteboard. Okay, put them overlapping and say that's kind of the same thing. So cut it down. Then remove anything that are like essential. For mine's a video training site, so there's no point talking about the value of having a video on the page. It's the most important, yes, and that's always gonna win, but it's essential. And for me, mine's a paid subscription site. Okay, so some sort of login is a feature, yes, but can we exist without it? No, this doesn't exist without some sort of logging in thing for students. Okay, so I removed that off there and get it down to the, that kind of the supporting features rather than the core stuff. Anything that's a bit iffy, leave in there. Okay, you think, oh, maybe we could be without this. Maybe that's arguable. Leave it in there. Okay, then you need to prioritize. Okay, you might have a big list, and then what do you work on? Because the developer might be thinking it definitely needs this thing. Okay, it needs the forum because that's what his experience, life experience, that's what's going to be really good for this thing. And the CEO though might be thinking, the whole reason for this thing is to have, I don't want this interaction with students. I want it to be kind of like a zombie website where it goes off and looks after itself. He doesn't want a big support team and people running it. So you've got to get all these ideas, and then you've got to prioritize them. Okay, so the way to prioritize them, there's a couple of ways. The easy ways, you just sit around and do it together. Okay, and maybe there's the monopoly money way, where you all sit down and you buy features. Okay, so you go through all the feature lists and try and cut it down to a reasonable amount. If there's some really weird stuff, okay, you might remove it off. Okay, but get it down to maybe 10 or 20, and then you can do stuff, give everybody some monopoly money, and you get them to, you pull up one post-it note, you stick it there, and you say, all right, how much are people going to spend on this? How much value do they think that has? And they might get given, 1,000 fake dollars. If you don't have monopoly money, you can use anything. You might be trading pens or coins or whatever's lying around the office, okay? And it makes people assign a value. And in saying that, it makes them take a value away from something else. Because you can't say, that is the top, that is also the top, which people do. They have to be both the top. They can't be. You have to start somewhere. You have to do something. So you need some sort of ordering. So then you might say, put up a feature, and for me, it might be the forum. So I think that's really valuable. I might cough up $500 for that one, knowing that I've only got 500 to go around the other ones. And it kind of, you can just pile the money on top and then count it at the end. Okay, then you've got a priority list. You start at whoever got the most money and work your way back through that list. And because you've all done it together, it's a really nice way of doing it, because it means that the developer who had a different idea from that CEO doesn't go, well, my idea is better, why isn't he doing it? Because they've had that chat. By putting the money down, conversations start happening and you start working out priorities and everybody starts getting on the same page. You might disagree, but it doesn't matter, because you've kind of been part of why, you understand the reasoning why these people have gone this way. And it might help things like, because often a new idea, the idea for these are kind of locked in people's head, especially the kind of the owner or the people initiating the project. They might have it in there and know what they want to do, but the other people don't know. Okay, so it kind of elicits all that sort of conversation. So that's one way of buying money. It's one way. Problem with that way is, and which you can get round, is kind of more like a poker version of that exact same thing. Give everybody the money, and what you do is you put the feature out, and everybody has to put down at the same time. Okay, because what happens is you get a bit of a boss bias where, say there's 5 of you around a table, the CEO and his employees. What happens is when you do that first example with the monopoly money is that whatever the boss does, everyone kind of like follows along, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, me too, just to make sure, just keep everybody happy. Okay, whereas if you do more of a poker one where everyone has to kind of you turn into a poker kind of style thing, and you try and make a game out of it because you don't want people to be caught out or feel bad. It's literally 1, 2, 3, and you put your money down, and then you kind of look around, because then there's no boss bias. Everyone's just put down what they think rather than kind of just like going around in a circle and just seeing what the boss put down and just kind of copying him. Okay, so that's kind of a nice way of doing it, nice and easy. What I find the most useful for me when I'm working, I deal with a lot of startups and kind of one-man band type things when we're doing UX, or a lot of my projects, okay, is pairwise comparisons. We'll do that. I find that's probably, out of all of them, my favorite that I've ever run. It works the easiest. Yeah, it's less gamey than the poker stuff. So, and you can do it by yourself as well. It's really handy. So let's do that in a whole new video, and we'll show you how to do that as a group. Alright, this video we're going to look at doing the compare-wise comparison, my favorite. And it's literally just comparing two and seeing who wins. It's pretty easy to do. Write down your examples on Notepad. And what you should do is, if you've never done this before, is go through and do a test run. Do it at home with your partner or friends at work, just so you get an idea of the time. I remember the first time I ran it as a group and I didn't test it. It took forever and everybody just got pissed off in the end. So make sure that you've kind of had if we're going to do 4 and it'll take us a couple of minutes to do. If you start getting up to like 20 features, it's going to take half an hour to do. If you've got quite a vocal group, because there's a bit of discussion that goes on, it can take a lot longer. So just give it a test run. It doesn't really matter how many you have. You just got to be warned. You just got to warn people. Like, if it's going to take, if you know it's going to take about an hour to do, just tell people it's going to take an hour. We'll have a break in the middle and we'll go through it all. And it takes a bit of time, but it's really worth it, rather than just kind of winging it and seeing how long it takes, and people getting a little bit annoyed. So all you do is you grab one. Okay, one of your features, and you compare it against another one. So I'm going to go you versus, so a social sharing option, okay, some sort of linky thing where you can share on Twitter and social. So I'm using my example of my video training site. Okay, so what features should it have? Okay, and what you're going to do is give some people some basis to make discussion. So there's a mixture of, it's relevance, how long it's going to take, how much it's going to take, and kind of a wow factor as well. Like, there's some things that they're low value in terms of the core concept, but they are really high, kind of wow factor, and they might be combined with a really easy to do. The developer might chip in and go, actually, that's really quick and easy to do, and everyone's like, that's pretty cool. So it might get a bit of a bonus compared to something else that might be not as useful, maybe more important, but will take a lot longer. So those are the kinds of boundaries. Make sure you have your user profile handy as well, so that when you're arguing, you're not saying, I think this is better than this. You're saying, marketing Mark thinks that would be better because of X, Y, and Z. Then it becomes less of a me versus you and becomes a discussion about Mark and his interests. Makes it a little bit less confrontational. So what you do is social versus video transcription, okay, where the video gets, my videos get transcribed into English and other languages. So we compare the two. Now it's not about getting it done, it's about having the discussion. And you will get a nice list at the end, but it's really about having that discussion about, you might have to start it. You say social sharing, I think those are not important. What do other people think? And it's that kind of dialogue about why this versus that, and the different teams chipping in. So the developer might go, that is going to take me about an hour to do. That there is going to take us And that's going to cost us next to nothing but his time. But this there, we're going to have to outsource. You know, who we're going to get to do this? Is it somebody in the office? Are we going to have to go through Upwork or something else? You know, and there's a cost. And then implementing it, the developer might go, actually, it's pretty easy to implement. And you can have these discussions around it, because from the boss's point of view, he might be going, well, why don't we do this? That's obviously the one. But then he finds out it's going to cost him a whole lot of money to do because the developer said it's not as easy as you think. Then you can, it's about this dialogue, okay, so everyone kind of gets an idea of what we're doing. So the long story short is you compare these two, and I think video transcription is more important than social sharing, okay, the social sharing button. So I put that over there. Now you versus you. Exercise files, downloadable exercise files, I like more than social sharing. Great. Forum versus social sharing. I think it's still more important, even though that's quick, okay. Poor old social sharing's done. Okay, you sit over there and he does nothing else now. Okay, now you go him versus him. Okay, forum versus exercise files. I think the exercise files is more important than the forum. Great. Okay, you go over there. And you can move this guy. I'm going to place him off screen to make it simpler. Do that for your students as well, or the people in your gang. Okay, so he's over there. These two compared to forum versus transcription. And this is where I could have a discussion about, I think video transcription is better because it's good keywords on the page. It's good for people that are maybe visually impaired, or find it hard, you know, or have really low bandwidth and they have to read it rather than, you know, rather than watch the video because they can't stream fast enough. And you can have this discussion. You say he wins. Okay, so he's done. Poor old forum. Okay, then you got these two, and out of these two, I think exercise files. And now you've got a most priority, next priority, next priority, next priority, and you can start working your way down the list. Okay, give them jobs to the different people and to go off and do. And we've all got a sense of what's important and what's not. And probably what's most important is that discussion that happens when you're comparing the two. And it's just amazing what you learn about what people think is important, what actually costs, and how long things take, especially when you're doing with webs and apps and stuff. There might be stuff that the developer knows, done that before, take me 5 seconds. Whereas you might be thinking, shit, that sounds really hard and it's going to take forever and cost lots of money. Okay, so that's the pairwise comparison. And yeah, let's get into the next video. Alright, in this video we're going to do something called an open card sort. Now what it means is, like in the last one we did with the kind of features list, and that works for some, some parts of the UX process for different products. A website was really good, an app's really good, but let's say it's something slightly different. You're rejigging your website, it's a new redesign, or you're adding lots of stuff to an existing kind of database or website, and you need to kind of group them in certain ways. A good way of doing it is like thinking about it as a navigation. Say you've got a navigation, you're an e-commerce site and you're selling, you're selling lots. You're an Amazon, eBay type thing. Okay, imagine them. They have to categorize stuff that people can find. They need to go through and say you want to buy a laptop. It has to be stored somewhere. It has to be under, computers, under laptops, under new. There's kind of like a structure to that. It also might be for, say you're developing something for like an airport kiosk, or say a mall kiosk where, somebody has to kind of figure out, they want to buy women's shoes. Where do you group them? Do they go under fashion? Great. Okay. Or do they go under footwear? Or, okay, it's just a way of kind of categorizing things and put them in order. You might have an idea, but you need to kind of work them out first, because it's amazing the projects that I've worked on that I've thought what they should be in, and then you realize, because what we do in New Zealand, where I'm from, is very different, and some of the languages are very different. Like, we're going to do this one where we're dealing with vegetables. There's some things that we, like, just as an example, we call things called capsicums. Here in Ireland, they're called peppers. And I kind of understand that, but I would definitely, if you're in New Zealand, there was a peppers category, you'd be looking for things like black cracked pepper, okay, but not capsicums, because they're not pepper. Okay, so it just helps you get the language and kind of ideas and group things out. So if you're doing a navigation for a site, or in case this one, it's a supermarket checkout. The bit where you're doing a self checkout and you're trying to find, you've bought some random muffin and you can't find it anywhere, or you've bought a vegetable and it's just not there. You can't find it. Okay, this kind of thing helps people get them in the right place. Okay, so what you do is, you list out all the things you need to categorize. In this case, we're going to use the supermarket analogy. You do yours for whatever you need to do. Okay, I've got loads in here. And what you need to do is break everybody into a group. Okay, so if you've only got 3 people, then there's going to be just 3 groups, okay? And if you've got loads more, you know, you might have to break people into pairs. That's probably it, okay? But because what you want to do is not get them all done. You want them to compare what that group decided the group names are and what that group is. So we'll make a little sense when we do stuff. Now, the problem with this, I guess, is that you can't see they're a bit small, okay, the ones that I use for my class. Look, this says leeks, broccoli, parsnips, garlic, and what you're doing is, as an example, is you start laying them out. So garlic here, parsnips here. I'm going to run out of space really quick, I understand. Okay, so you. Got my group names, you can sit over there. It's parsnips, broccoli, leeks. Oh, I still feel like we haven't grouped them. I love that one, leeches. I have to Google it every time. I have no idea what that is. Okay, and that's a really handy one to have in. Throw in a few oddballs because it's fun to, not fun, but it's like sometimes people just assume what they're called. Okay, and you'd be like, no, that needs to be called something else. It's known in this region as this. Okay, so I have no idea. Here's at Google carrots, and then I'm going to go with parsnips, kind of a root vegetable type thing. And this is where you start going. Okay, this group here now is going to be called root vegetables. Okay, so I'm going to grab my marker. And I'm going to call him root vegetables. Okay, root veggies. And what you're doing is you're looking for what the other groups call them. They might have categorized them differently. They might have put this, you know, I'm not sure what they would have put other than root vegetables, but they might have. Okay, mushrooms, where is that going to go? Maybe they've decided garlic and mushrooms go together. Chilies. So maybe chilies and garlic go together, and they call this one maybe spices, or you know, you might call this one condiments. Or what you're looking for is not the right answer. You're looking for lots of variation, because one group might come up with spices and the other group come up with another name, and that's the beauty of this. You can go through and say actually and discuss about what you should be calling them and what things ended up. So I've got onions. They might go in with leeks because they're kind of, in my head, they're the same family. And this is what you're going to do. Oranges, fruit, fennel. We've got loads of them here. And you're looking for groups. There'll be a couple of outliers. There'll be like this leeches thing, because I don't even know what that is. Okay, sitting over here. But somebody else might put it in a really good group and, you know, just renamed it and included this one in here, and becomes very obvious. Okay, it might be that names are not going to work. You might find out that it's just too hard. You've got so many groups, you're going to have to use images for, you know, as well as names. Okay, and that's what the idea of this card sort is about. It's about getting the conversation going, making sure there's separate teams. Okay, you might be doing this by yourself, and the 2 other people have the same printouts. Okay, but just coming up with different group names and kind of putting them together differently. And, you know, or pairs, and it is about working out what these kind of group names. So that navigation now, so for my supermarket checkout, I could go through and, you know, have these kind of like home directories, and then, you know, you click the little tap button and then these appear, and that's the whole reason for this. Or it might be navigation on a website. Yeah. So open card sort is this way of doing. Now, a closed card sort is something different. What you do is you give people the group names already. Okay, so you give them root vegetables, spices, and what you do is you say, I'd like you to place these in a group. So you don't get to pick the names, okay? The users have to put them in. They have to try and find out which ones these are going to go into, okay? Because you might have an existing navigation that works, and you don't want to be rejigging the whole thing, okay? Because it's too much work. You want to just find in, say you've got all of these things, but these 2 are new objects, okay? Or new features or new things that you're going to include, and what you need to do is find out where their home is. So that way you can go through and they'll include them naturally, and then it makes it easy for you to know where they have a home on your website or app or thing. All right, so that is a closed card sort, and yeah, those are our kind of, it's really useful for integrating stuff into an existing site. I realize my hands kind of wave. I do this when I'm talking. It makes more sense when my hands are wiggling and you can see my face, but you can't. So hand wiggling it is. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so here's some of the wireframing that I do by hand, okay? And don't get too excited, it's not super exciting. Now, a lot of this particular wireframing this is just my journal, okay? Has to be a moleskin, right? To impress you, I know what I'm doing. These wireframes are often just internal kind of stuff that I'm doing for my business where I don't have to go and present, so the level of quality doesn't have to be too high, but it's amazing to do the wireframing. If you're just working on your own project, okay, don't be tempted to skip wireframe and go straight to Photoshop. It's so important. I know, because I used to skip and go straight to Photoshop, and it's not until I've been kind of like been forced into it and kind of like really embrace the UX process before I realized wireframing is just part of, like, it's a really core part of it. So in terms of the wireframes, this is the kind of level that we're looking at. That is a wireframe. Okay, let's have a look. Some other wireframes. Some other things and bits. You can see the level of them. It's just to get ideas down. Sometimes I put a bit more care into them, but not much. Okay, they're ones I like, it's kind of at this level. Now, would I deliver this to the client? Say I'm working in a process where I've been hired as a UX consultant and I'm going in with wireframing. I'd put a little bit more effort into it, not a huge amount, because what I don't want to do is I've had discussions where I've brought in Photoshop mockups, and it's the time to talk about kind of basic features and layout where people have started picking colors and picking fonts, or what I don't like the font. Oh, you can't call it that. So keep the language out, use Lorem Ipsum, use squiggly text for lines, so people can they just get a really good sense of it, but without getting into too much detail. Okay, and if you're super special, you might get a little bit of color. Oh, look, highlighting. Okay, but that's about it. That's my wireframes, and that really works for me in terms of ideas. And the other thing is that don't just do one wireframe. Okay, one wireframe. You go your features list, and you start adding them into here, and don't just do one wireframe. I find I need to do 5. Okay, even if your first one, like, you do this one, that looks cool. Then the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one. And it's not till you get a few through into them that you actually kind of work out a few bugs, because you might go, yeah, that's great. Then you force yourself to do a second one. You know it's crap because that was the good one. Then you do a third one, you're like, oh geez, they're going through the process. But I know often when I do all 5 and I force myself to, number 3 is the winner. If you'd stopped at number 2, you would never have got that amazing layout for number 3. Okay, so force yourself to go through and do some more than just one layout. Then what happens with these wireframes is that you can go in, present to the client or the person you're working with, and it's really easy to talk to these wireframes. And on the fly, I find pencil ones, if somebody's got a different idea, I can quickly sketch them out in front of them. Okay, and we can really kind of like talk about the ideas and actually, kind of get it signed off there. You're like, okay, I like this, but you want something else. And then you kind of draw it out, because what happens is you might leave a conversation and he's thinking one thing and she's thinking a different thing. And when you come back with your flats or your kind of like more refined mock-ups, everybody's a bit surprised. You're like, oh, I thought we talked about not having that. And you're like, no, I thought we did. But if you've got a physical mock-up and you're drawing it out, people are like, oh, no, I didn't mean that. Those sorts of things happen at that kind of mock-up stage, which is really cool. And I prefer hand drawing. Now, that's totally like if you're working in a kind of a Fortune 500 and they're expecting fancy stuff, that you're charging a lot as a UX designer and they're expecting fancier things, then sure, go use Balsamic or Mockingbird and deliver something a little high value, but don't spend a long time of it. Explain to them the value in wireframes, that they're quick, they're easy, they're dirty, they're not meant to be an annual report kind of level of design before you deliver them, rather than kind of sneaking in and they thinking they're about to get some sort of amazing ad pitch and you turn up with a couple of hand-drawn things. So make sure that they understand that part of the process is wireframing, and wireframing is very crude and might be done on the fly while we're talking and adjusted, and make sure their expectations are equal to what you're going to deliver before you deliver it. It sucks working into a meeting where you haven't really clarified what a wireframe is and you turn up with stuff like this and it's not super exciting, and they're expecting full-on mock-ups that they might be able to use. All right, that's it for this bit. Let's look at some other parts of wireframing now. All right, in this video, we're going to actually start doing some wireframing. Now, wireframing is, as it probably sounds, just kind of really basic sketch. Now, we're trying to avoid getting into too much details at wireframing mode. Now, how should you wireframe? What should you do during wireframe? There's a lot to do with your project, okay? And your style of working. So when it comes to wireframing, for me, I always do it by hand and pencil, and I'll show you that in a sec. I find it's quicker, it's easier, and it leaves, it stops getting into this big project, and it's, I prefer working that way. I know amazing UX designers who use tools as well. You might be a tools kind of person for this step, and that's totally fine. Now, the most popular one is Balsamic, okay? There's a couple other ones that get used in the industry. I've never used them. I've used Balsamiq a few times, but there's another one called Mockingbird.com, and it's gomockingbird.com, and mockupbuilder.com. There's loads of other ones as well, but they seem to be the most popular around, especially Balsamiq. Now, the other thing is something called Adobe Comp. Now, they all do the same sort of thing. Let's have a little look. You can see the prototypes are here. They're actually really basic, okay, just wireframes. There's no real detail to them. Using I guess a tool like this does add a little bit. You start adding fonts and things like that. You get an idea of what a wireframe is going to be made out of these. If you go to gallery here, you'll start to see kind of some of the wireframes that come out of this thing. Now, one of the cool things that Adobe do, I'm a Adobe fanboy, right? So Adobe Comp has this really cool app for iPhone and for iPad. It only really works on the iPad. And I don't have, I'm not going to go through and do an example because I show people because it's mainly because it's really cool. Do I actually use it in my kind of like professional work? No, but let's have a quick little look. I'm just watching our YouTube. It's a bit weird. You're watching a video. Let's watch it together. I'll put this in fast forward, but you can see it turns these gestures, swipey lines, put a full stop, turns into a big Lorem box, up and down. Can you see there's really cool kind of functions in here where you get to use hand gestures and it starts adding type. So I'm going to skip along a little bit, put a cross in it. You can add images. This is where I feel like you lose the value of wireframing when you start adding images and people start, instead of kind of like looking at the real basic structure, people start looking at and go, oh, we can't use that image, that text is wrong. And you see these lovely features in this thing. Like, it's a really beautiful app. Good work, Adobe. But, plus. Okay, grouping, dividing, I love it. But yeah, I don't use it other than to demo to people. So those are the kind of physical, those are the kind of tools you could use. Let's go over now and have a look at some of the wireframes that I do. Now, should you test your wireframes? And I don't mean sitting down and discussing them, I mean actual user testing. I'd say no, but I've seen people do it. And I see people teach that do it, okay? And they like it and they find value in it. And if you find value in it, go and do it. And just so you know, if you've never seen it, it's just doing paper stuff. So like you lay some sheets in front of people and you get people to kind of like fake click of where they'd go. And then you swap out the bit of paper with the next page. And I find, like, for me, I feel like if you've spent the time and money finding good qualified users to do your user testing, then you can put a little bit more effort into doing some digital version. Especially if you're a UX designer, you'll have some kind of creative skills in either Photoshop or even if it's PowerPoint or Word. You can do a more complete digital version, okay, with some actual interactivity to do. So, can you do testing wireframes? Yes. Have I ever done it? No. In this video, we're going to look at mood boards and inspiration. And we've done our wireframes, and now we're going to move into the physical designing stuff in a second. So we're going to build our UI. Now, before we go and do that, we want to get an idea about what this kind of look and feel is going to be. Now, the term's called mood boards, and it's just a way of getting together a bunch of stuff that other people have done to give a kind of a feeling of what you're going to do. Now, if you're working in a larger company, you might have to present your mood boards. Okay, you'll have to actually display them and show the kind of thing that the path you're going to go down before you go and do it. If you're doing it in a smaller team, it might be just get some stuff together and be a kind of like an over-the-shoulder type thing where somebody's just kind of, you're kind of spitballing with them about ideas before you go off and do it. Either way, there's a really cool tool that I use, this one here called Nice with 2 I's, .co. So nice.co, there is them. And all it is just a mood board. It's like Pinterest. You might use Pinterest, that's fine. I don't like Pinterest for the fact that it has a very, I like this because it's really stripped bare. Okay, I've got all these kind of images here, like Pinterest, but it's all kind of like more of a montage than like a kind of a list kind of form or kind of thumbnails like Pinterest does. You could use Pinterest just fine. Now, what you do is you go to sign up. There's a free account. I think you get like 4 mood boards you can do. And what happens is there's a little icon. Can you see in the top here? There's this little eye, 2 eyes here. That's the little Chrome plugin. It's free to install. And what it means is you can go to other sites. Say I go to a site like, let's just say I go to Behance. Okay, and I'm looking, Behance is a good way to get inspiration. Okay, say you do a search in here and you're looking for UI. And in here, you're looking for just ideas and concepts for yourself. And say you like some of these designs on this page. Okay, what happens is, say you like this and want to use this to your mood board because you like the look and feel for it. What you can do is you can click this little icon here. This little thing pops up in the bottom. And what we can do is we can create a new board. So I'm going to add a new mood board, and this is going to be for my video tutorial project. Okay, and what happens is, grab this little icon, drag him down here. Okay, and he's added to this mood board. Find some other stuff. Okay, say you like that, but you also like this. Okay, and you drag this into that mood board. And what's happening is you can keep adding things to this mood board. Jump back to nice, and we'll see in here, hopefully, give it a refresh. There's my video tutorial project. I'm going to click on that. And there's my mood board with these two on here. And the free version has some features disabled, but you can print these. You can print them to a PDF. And once you've got a few of them, watch this. We'll keep adding some stuff as we go along, but you can start to do, actually that's quite an important one. And this one here, you can move around to this function and you can build this really nice mood board to get a look and feel. And then what you do is you go to your client or to the, your stakeholder and say, this is the look I'm going down. Or you might create two mood boards and say, this is one option, this is another option, which, how are we feeling about it all before you go off and spend loads of time designing. Okay, so, that's how you build your mood boards. Now, sites you can go to get inspiration. You probably got somewhere you go. Okay, everyone's got a place. Now, I'll share you mine, and it's quite specific to do with UI and UX. Now, the first one is this one called the Webby Awards. So every year there's a Webby Awards, like the Oscars, but for designers or UX or UI designers. And there's a bunch of different categories in here. I'm in Best User Experience. And a really cool thing about it is that it details it quite well in terms of apps. Okay, so you can go through and decide whether it's, I'm in the mobile sites and apps category, but you might go into the web design one. You can see there's a huge amount of different options in here. But what it does is it kind of breaks down the apps, lovely photos, and really great for mood boards. Okay, hey, Tinder. And, so you might decide that I like the look of this Boomerang app, okay, and you like the look and feel of it, and you're going to borrow stuff, or at least get the mood for it there. Okay, there's not much on this one, but anyway, I can open up my nice app now and click, hold, drag him in, and now he's part of that mood board. Okay, and just work your way through the site. Webby's quite cool. Another really good one is the awards, dub. Okay, so it's kind of a web-based one. There is stuff for both mobile and websites, and yeah, just really cool. It's where you find really beautiful stuff. Okay, it might get you inspired for your next project. Okay, and they have quite good details, who worked on them. Yeah, nice. Okay, and so let's look at some other ones. We looked at this one already, Behance. This is Adobe's version. Okay, it has some really cool stuff on here. If I go into this and type search and I type UX, there's some really cool UX projects on here. Cool, just plain old Google Images. Okay, so I'm in Google Images here, and I'm just going to type UI design, and there's just great things to kind of get you started. You might like, I love that, and open up your app, start dragging things in. Okay, and yeah, that's how I get my mood boards, or at least my style ideas, together in some sort of kind of order, or just get a feeling for things, and I can go back to my clients and say, this is what I'm looking to do, before you go off and do it, because they might be like, wow, that looks so 1990s, and I'm like, huh, I thought they're quite modern, or they've got a really different feeling for it. So yeah, mood boards can be really helpful and save some time before you go and actually doing UI. All right, that's it for mood boards and getting your inspiration. Next step, let's start designing some mockups. Hi, this video we're going to look at tips for building amazing UI UX designs. So we're kind of at the UI stage now, where we're actually building some physical things. Now, first of all, let's discuss what a mockup is. Now, we're going to have to build something now that's going to be tested. And you can build it lots of different ways. We're going to talk about the tools and techniques in a little bit. But essentially, this is some of the stuff that I do. I build things in Photoshop. Okay, this is a mock-up of one of my training sites. There's a video thing, there's subscription pages. And all of these are flats. These are just Photoshop layers. Okay, they don't do anything. You can't click any of it. They're not hyperlinks. I use this tool because I'm really quick at Photoshop. So that was one of the tools that I use for a lot of my UI designs. Now, what I'm going to have to do after here is add a bit of interactivity, and that's done generally through something called InVision, and we'll look at that later on as well. So I can take these and add some clickability to it to get it tested. So it could be that you're using Photoshop, you could be using PowerPoint. You can build your UI kind of mock-up any which way you like, InDesign, Illustrator, Muse. There's lots of online tools as well. I'll show you using Sketch and Experience Designer. So yeah, that's what a mock-up is. We're going to do some kind of quick stuff so that we can then get it off and get it tested. Right, so now let's get into some of the tips for building your mock-ups. Now, the first thing you need to do if you're new to this kind of like online app web building stuff is go check out this site here. It's material.google.com. And the lovely people at Google have put together this really, it's the super manual for UI interaction design, okay, whether it's mobile or web. And just go through it, read it all up, and suck in all the information. There's a huge amount of stuff in here. Like, it looks quite simple, and it is because it's really beautifully designed. But if you start working your way through it, there is so much valuable, thoughtful information in here. Even if you're not, there's lots of things in here I'd argue with in terms of the way that they're kind of like talking about some of the objects. And even if you don't agree with it, what it's going to really get out of it is you're going to be able to kind of talk the talk, okay? Understanding the language when you are trying to express ideas. You're not saying it's cool. You're kind of using, the proper language and be able to kind of articulate yourself a lot better by going through this site. And yeah, just getting there's a lot of really key features in here about materials and kind of interaction and movement. There's a lovely good stuff in here. Now, one of the best parts in here that I go back to quite a bit is there's a resources option, okay? And there's some really cool templates and stuff you can use out of here, fonts, sticker sheets. There's some really cool things in here. So it'll take you a long time, and it should be something though that every UX designer goes through and reads. Even if you're not a designer, it has some really amazingly valuable stuff in here. Now, our first tip in awesome, amazing tips for UI designers is talking about the above the fold. So above the fold is kind of the terminology came from newspapers where they were laying down flat and people picked them up based on the stories that they could see. And anything that was, it was on the front page, but if it was folded down and underneath, you wouldn't see it. So you'd have all the top stories fighting it out to be, what was really important was above the fold. It's the same for websites, okay? That language is being used where you can see on my side here, I'm at CNN, the stuff that I can see now is above the fold. Anything that I have to scroll down for is below the fold, okay? And potentially, you could, if you've got your most important message or your, say it's an e-commerce site, the buy now buttons or the kind of main, I guess, headlines or call to actions, they're below the fold is not a good place for them. They need to be above the fold. So you're going to have to balance out what goes above the fold. You can't put everything on the site up here, but the most important stuff needs to be. Okay, people will argue that, people don't mind scrolling, and there are sites that do kind of work with that, but if you start looking at research and statistics about where people do scroll, and ClickTail's a really good one. I just did an image search for the ClickTail. We're gonna look at ClickTail later on, but you can see the kind of heat maps for scrolling. You can see everybody sees the red stuff, and the amount of people that scroll, the kind of colors change. So when it gets down to this blue stuff, that means very few people have gone down to there. So if your really good call to action, it happens to be right down this blue stuff and most people aren't seeing it, you're not being able to deliver your main message. And they do some really cool free information about working on above the fold as well, and it has data about how many people scroll down to different pixel lengths and the percentage of people scrolling. So if you do need a bit of backup in terms of explaining your reasons to have things in certain places, there's some really cool stuff for above the fold there. The next thing to consider is that your homepage might not be the page that gets seen the most or the most important page. When you start doing designing a UI, you spend ages on the homepage, and I do it myself, but there's a lot of time where the homepage isn't the most important. And you got to think of yourself. You've done Google searches and you've ended up within a site on a page, but potentially not the homepage. And I know that's true because I can look at, say, data like this. I can go to my analytics, I can look at behavior, site content, and landing pages. So not the most popular pages. Okay, I don't want to go to all pages. I want to go to landing pages. This is where people land, where they come directly into my site. And the cool thing about it is I can look in here and I can see that actually my home page, which is this little slash here, is not the most important page. Okay, it's not the most landed on page. It's this, my Dreamweaver responsive bootstrap one. Now this is the page that people land on when they want to do a course for Dreamweaver Responsive. There's another Dreamweaver course, there's my HTML5 banner pages. These are all my overview pages for starting a course, okay? And so you've got to make sure that you communicate your core goals on all pages, or at least all the kind of landing pages. So people forget that. They'll do everything kind of all their big hero text and their really kind of big sell and their call to action on the homepage, and then kind of leave it off all the rest of the pages. So you might have to integrate that stuff into lots of pages. I have to do it on my overview pages because I know that people land on those more than my homepage. All right, the next tip is borrowed credibility. This one's a bit iffy, okay? It means that, you can see in here, this is my New Zealand website, okay? We do in-classroom stuff, and you can see we're an Adobe Certified Training Center, so I've used that throughout the site. I love the brand. It kind of makes us official from Adobe, which we are. I make sure we use the official logos, and there's a bit of kind of their brand, Adobe's brand, rubbing off on us. Down here at the bottom here, these are the companies that we work with, okay? These are some of the companies we've done work for. Now, if you're not from New Zealand, you're probably not going to recognize any of these, but these are the big brands in New Zealand, and there's this kind of inference of, they trust us and they have used us before, so maybe I should trust them as well. And that's what you're looking to do for this borrowed credibility. Now, it doesn't just have to be logos and brands. It can be things like fonts. I've done it before where I've used the same font as Adobe. Okay, so I could kind of align myself with them a little bit more. I don't anymore. Another thing I've done is I've used YouTube's kind of their fonts and their kind of weights and stuff to kind of add a bit of video to my sites before. I've changed from that since. Okay, but it's not just, not just colors and fonts and logos. There's lots of things you can do. Now, in terms of icons and logos like this, let's have a look at some of the other ones. Whipster is a site that I use, and I was just looking at it. I was just trying to find examples. You can see these are the companies that they're working with. Same with Moz. These are the people that are using Moz. I just Googled London accountant to find an example. And you can see down here, they're a gold partner for Xero. They've won some awards. Okay, these types of things add credibility to a site. And it's a thing you can kind of think about to what in your industry, like I've done work for my accountant, and I made sure he's a certified, a certified accountant, and I make sure that that's plastered all over the place because it adds that, it's a qualification, and it makes it all very official and kind of adds value to his site. Okay, that kind of brand connection. Okay, this is going to be our last little tip and trick, and it's the 5-second test. I like this because it helps me when I'm designing. I sometimes get stuck in a bit of a loop of just kind of cramming things in and shuffling it all around to make it all fit. And I kind of forget the purpose of the site is that it needs to be a kind of a clear, a clear message about what it is, because you've got a really short amount of time. Like you could argue you've got 5 seconds before somebody moves on to the next page, but it's around that sort of time where people make a decision based on your site. So what you can do for yourself is while you're designing is just to get somebody to test. So it might be the person sitting next to you, it might be somebody at home, and just so you can flash it to it. And all you do is it's really primitive. This is the official tool from Usability Hub, the 5-second test, and you can sign up and make them do it, and it's a cool kind of cool kind of thing. But I find I do it quite primitive. I do this. I watch. See this tab here? I'm gonna force you to do a 5-second test. Ready? Go. Okay, and what I want you to do is try and recall what you remembered about it. Okay, you've only got a short amount of time, but I'm not saying that my example here, this is my Irish website, I'm not saying it's a good example, it was just an example, and it just really helps you get clear about, was it communicated, am I communicating the core values or the main USP or whatever you need to be getting across? Are you doing it clearly, or have you designed it kind of into loads of different things and it's really unclear what it does? The 5-second test I find is really useful, even just to do to yourself. Okay, you don't have to get other people involved, just to kind of look at it quickly and say, am I getting this across? Is the hierarchy of information quite useful? Now that's it for the tips in terms of before you get started or while you're working. Now we're going to look at some of the tools you can use to start building your mockups. Hey there, so it's time to actually build your high fidelity, high res mockup, okay? And there are a few different tools to use. The most popular are XD, which is Adobe's Experience Designer, XD. There is Sketch, another super popular one. There's other ones like Framer and Azure, InVision have their InVision Studio. A lot of people also use just plain old Photoshop and Illustrator to do the UI, and then use something like InVision's kind of web app. They've got a website kind of thing that you can use to add interactivity. Doesn't really matter which one you use. My favorite is Adobe XD. I've got a full course on that as well. So there's a UI and web design using Adobe XD course. Go check that one out. Yeah, so those are the tools. They all have pros and cons. Sketch gets used more, more popular for using for apps. XD is quite new from Adobe. Yeah, there's no kind of clear winner, and it doesn't really matter in terms of user testing. Okay, as long as you can build the graphics in it, whatever you're fast in, you can use things like InDesign if you are really fast at doing kind of UI designs in there, and add interactivity with something like InVision. Up to you, but my advice is if you're going to learn any of them, it's probably XD or Sketch. So go check those out, and yeah, that is it for this video. Bye now.